The death of the UnitedHealthCare CEO Brian Thompson is the event that no one can shut the up about. A man who was in charge of the largest insurance company ever and one of the biggest companies in the world was shot dead. The internet has not been this shook up since the submarine accident over a year ago, and this whole thing clearly was intentional. This was a murder. This one incident has scared the living hell out of the entire healthcare industry and will change history as we know it. And a lot of people have mixed reactions to the whole thing. On one hand, people are pretty happy over the death of another pawn in a very corrupt industry, but people are also very hesitant to praise literal murder. As of now, the suspect and the alleged killer, Luigi Mangione, has been found and charged with second-degree murder, 3 gun charges, and forgery. The shocking part about Luigi, well, he's nothing like people really expected. He was an Ivy League student with a great career, great social life, and a very high passion for living life to the fullest. There are so many questions right now being asked about the situation. Why did he allegedly do it? Do they have the right man? And is this all part of some larger conspiracy that we're just not really aware of? I'm doing a huge deep dive into the whole case, and I'm gonna answer a lot of questions and also open up a lot of new ones. So let's cut the bullshit and get right into it. On December 4th at 6:45 a.m., Brian Thompson was walking on 54th West Street in New York City. He was on his way to a meeting at the New York Midtown Hotel with a group of investors. Outside of the hotel near the entrance was a man standing around 20 feet away from Brian. When the man had a chance, he fired 3 shots, with 2 of them landing on Brian, 1 in Brian's back and 1 in Brian's calf. The man then fled away from the scene on an e-bike. Brian was taken to the hospital immediately but was pronounced dead at 7:12 a.m., 27 minutes after the shooting. Now, this story went super viral for a ton of reasons. I mean, for one, the CEO of a gigantic company getting shot already was news enough. But what really made this go viral was the surveillance video that was released right after. In the video, we see the man, who was wearing a very discreet disguise to hide his face and identity with a mask and a hoodie. His 9mm pistol was equipped with a suppressor to not make as much sound, and the way he approached Brian, it seemed like as if he was following him, tracking him, waiting for the right time to make his move. And because of YouTube guidelines, I can't show Brian actually getting shot by the gunman, but you can use your imagination. You can probably find the uncensored version somewhere. But based on the video, this clearly was not an impulsive decision. This was obviously planned. People thought that this guy may have been some type of really high-skilled assassin, or some type of hitman. When police reviewed the footage, it seemed like as if the man was fidgeting with the gun as if it was jammed, but he was quickly able to solve it, meaning that he has some type of experience with guns. The story could not have gone more viral. There is literally nothing else that people could talk about on the news. No internet drama or other scandal was nearly as important or crazy as this right here. The media had lots of reactions, but the public people didn't really seem to. On one hand, a father to 2 children and a husband was murdered in cold blood on the street. But on the other hand, Brian was never really seen as a good person. In fact, kind of the opposite. And looking at the decisions and his actions with UnitedHealthCare, it really explains a lot. Now, before Brian even became CEO of the company back in 2021, UnitedHealthCare was already very fucked up. There's tons of reports about how they have lobbied millions to politicians to make laws in their favor. Managers and directors have backdated stocks, which heavily misleads investors and goes against several tax laws. They have faced countless lawsuits for falsely denying people coverage over the past couple of years, and they were even accused of overcharging the government for hundreds of $millions for Medicare Advantage plans. And these are literally just the first couple of things on their scandal lists. The company has basically had a notorious reputation for constantly prioritizing profit over people's health. They're an extremely stereotypical, greedy, and relentless American corporation. To this day, UHC easily has the most amount of revenue out of any healthcare company and has the 9th highest revenue of any company in the world. In 2023, they had a net income of $23.14 billion and a net income of $371 million. Safe to say, they make fat stacks. And they get that money doing pretty shady shit. As if the industry wasn't already extremely corrupt, Brian Thompson made it so much worse when he stepped into the chair. Within Brian's first year, he was already getting a ton of backlash for doing some pretty messed up shit. Brian devised a plan to start denying payments to patients who visited the emergency room for non-critical purposes. So for patients that visited the ER and it wasn't deemed life-threatening, well, they wouldn't have their insurance cover it. And visits to the ER on average can cost around between 1.5 grand to 20 grand. The American Hospital Association patient published a public letter as to why this was a pretty terrible thing to do. Patients are not medical experts and should not be expected to self-diagnose during what they believe is a medical emergency. Threatening patients with a financial penalty for making the wrong decision could have a chilling effect on seeking emergency care. Essentially, it was putting patients at possible risk for essentially just small penny pinching. When they got a ton of backlash for this, instead of canceling it like they should have, instead they delayed implementing the policy until all the controversy burst over. And under Brian's reign, the company did lots of weird shit to basically reject claims. They started to implement AI to automate claim denials instead of having real medical professionals actually hands-on evaluate them. This started to result in much more rejections, even though there were no medical professionals actually evaluating the cases here. There was a class action lawsuit being pressed against them when they were accused of knowingly using AI that had a 90% error rate. So basically, a ton of people that needed the money to cover their financial costs were basically denied because of some shitty AI. Between 2020 and 2022, Medicare denial rates more than doubled, going from 10.9% to 22.7%. And UnitedHealthCare as a whole had the highest rejection rate of all claims with a whopping 32%. And this was all under Brian Thompson's reign. And under all of these new strict implementations, UHC's revenue increased by 77%, while Brian had a fat net worth of $43 million. Much of this wasn't really super public or talked about until his death, and hence why so many people celebrated at the news of this. When the official UHC announced the death of Brian Thompson on their Facebook page, it received over 11,000 laughing emoji reactions. The hate got so bad they had to turn off their Instagram comment section because people were just commenting the most out-of-pocket shit. People were celebrating like as if it was the second coming of Jesus. My empathy is out of network for this one. Sorry, but my insurance and Medicaid don't cover thoughts and prayers. Judging by the public reaction, I think we should be wondering why this doesn't happen more often. And tons of people shared their experiences from the financial burdens they suffered because of their insurance claims getting rejected. From the mainstream public, there was no sympathy. Now, while we all know murder is not okay, it begs the question of who the real killer is when you really look at all the details here. The man with the gun shot the bullets, but Brian also is akin to a lot of deaths when you really think about it. Even official media companies that were covering the topic were seemingly trying to hide their glee. So many people were trying to pretend it was a sad situation, but deep down were celebrating. The only people that actually seemed to be sad about this was Brian's family. Brian was an incredibly loving, generous, talented man who truly lived life to the fullest and touched so many lives. Most importantly, Brian was an incredibly loving father to our 2 sons and will be greatly missed. People really didn't seem to give a fuck though, because right after Brian's death, his family's address got doxed. Several bomb threats were sent to the FBI under their name and their address, which caused their house to get swatted multiple times, which is just pretty messed up. UHC and other companies like CrossShield and CVS took down all of their public information from their executives. They took down their pictures and anything that people could find out about them, which probably was the smart thing to do. And in response to this whole event, these companies have now been trying to hire more security. Upon the scene of the crime, all 3 bullets each had different words carved into them: delay, deny, and depose. These are well-known insurance phrases that are used to deny claims. It mostly stems from the book Delay, Deny, Defend, a book that heavily criticizes the insurance company. At this point, the motive is out of the question. The next question really was, who did it? Well, right after the crime, the police offered 10 grand to anyone who can give them any information on the killer, and the FBI offered 50 grand to anyone that can give them information leading to his arrest. Police were able to find that he actually traveled to NYC from Atlanta on November 24th on a bus, and stayed in a New York City hostel pretty close to where he shot Brian. The most amount of evidence that police had was actually from the surveillance footage from the New York hostel where the man briefly took down his mask for a little bit to flirt with a desk attendant. However, this wasn't really enough to find out his identity. He used a fake ID to book into the hostel, and the face was too blurry to really do any face tracking. The only other evidence that police had was a candy wrapper, a water bottle, and a phone that they found at a nearby Starbucks where he stopped at, along with his backpack that they did find in Central Park that was full of Monopoly money. At this point, they knew that he definitely left New York City by now, so they started a nationwide search. With this being one of the biggest stories at the time, it was only a matter of time before they found him. 5 days later, at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, a man was reported who looked very similar to the one in the picture. Police came to the McDonald's and started questioning him. When they asked if he ever been to New York before, he started visibly shaking. When they asked for his ID, he noticeably gave them a fake one, the same fake ID that was used at the New York hostel. Authorities arrested the man. His name, Luigi Mangione. He was found with a 3D printed gun and a silencer very similar to the one used at the crime, a 3-page manifesto, along with the fake ID ID that was used at the hostel. There was a shit ton of evidence already pointing to his guilt from the get-go. The man went instantly viral and was basically pronounced guilty until proven innocent. People praised him as a real hero, and the girls were shamelessly simping over him. And no homo, but that's a good looking dude, so I don't blame him. But people were curious as to who this man really was and why he did it, as he was still really only a suspect at the time and not really deemed the real killer. There were lots of doubts initially because some of the facial features from his mugshot didn't really line up to the man that was in the security footage. Was this even the right man? Doing a lot of digging, there's a lot of questions that are answered, but also a lot more that are presented. Looking into his history, Luigi was actually a pretty privileged person, as he is one of the 37 grandchildren of real estate dealer Nick Mangione, who was a millionaire before dying in 2008. He had owned a country club in Maryland and actually developed a golf course community there. Over time, the family actually continued to own more and more country clubs, kind of building a small empire. They were extremely prestigious and very, very well respected. They also owned the radio station WCBM, which regularly aired conservative news and programs. One of Luigi's cousins is Nino Mangione, an elected member of the Maryland House of Delegates. And Luigi has had some of the best education that a person could get in the world. He went to Gilman School in Maryland, which is a very, very prestigious all-boys preparatory school that costs 37 grand a year to attend. And that's just a high school. He was a very, very hard worker, as he was actually the top of his class and a valedictorian. He even started his own video game app in high school and played a lot of sports. At graduation, he gave a very large speech on the importance of changing the world. He then went on to the University of Pennsylvania, which is one of the most prestigious colleges in the world. It's an Ivy League school with a 5% acceptance rate. It's the same college that Donald Trump and Elon Musk have attended. It was here that he earned a bachelor's in community science, a minor in mathematics, and a master's in computer science. He was extremely active on campus, and almost anyone who interacted with him only had nice things to say, even after what had happened. He was very ambitious about his schoolwork and took his degree very, very seriously. It's so unexpected that someone who committed such a horrendous crime actually has such a squeaky clean background and who was super positive. Usually people who commit these types of crimes are huge losers who really have nothing to lose. They usually have no friends, no social life, and always suffer some kind of mental illness. I mean, look at almost any school. But Luigi was none of these things at all. He had a degree from a top university, tons of friends, he was handsome as hell, no homo, and tons of opportunities. He had no reports of mental illness and actually seemed way healthier than the average person. All of his friends and family could not make sense of it, and neither could the world. What made him essentially sacrifice his life to commit this crime? And where did this shift happen? Things start to make a little bit more sense when you dig just a little bit deeper. Luigi's Twitter went from less than 600 followers to over 300,000 followers after the news came out. Luigi seemed to be a pretty open book on social media. He posted lots of stuff that dealt with self-care and mental health. He was a pretty big fan of Andrew Huberman and also seemed to be a fan of psilocybin. He was a very active reader with nearly 300 books reviewed on Goodreads. Now, after college, Luigi continued with his passion for tech by working for the company TrueCar, which is based in Santa Monica, California. Now, while working there, he moved to Honolulu, Hawaii, where he worked remotely from January to June of 2022. Luigi was a pretty avid traveler and boosted about it quite heavily on his social media. He lived in a co-living space called Surf Break, which catered to a lot of remote workers like himself. The founder of Surf Break actually met Luigi and had this to say: "Our mission statement is that we're a community of givers, that we leave things better than we found them. We look for people who give back, and he fit the bill. He was an ideal member for us." Again, another positive thing that just doesn't line up with his actions. But there is a clue that gives this away. That same person also mentions that Luigi has some back issues. Pretty serious back issues. His spine kind of misaligned. He said his lower vertebrae were almost like a half-inch off, and I think it pinched a nerve. Sometimes he'd be doing well and other times not. These back issues caused Luigi pretty debilitating pain. It happened so often that it actually would affect his day-to-day work life. It was hard for him to do regular activities like surfing or rock climbing. After just one basic surf lesson, Luigi was bedridden for a week from the back pain. And it was actually so bad it quite literally affected his dating life. He knew dating and being physically intimate with his back condition wasn't possible. I remember him telling me that and my heart just breaks. However, he did not really complain about it or take any medication for it. In June of 2022, he left Hawaii to go back to the East Coast to see his doctor. He returned to live in Hawaii again for a year, but left during the summer of 2023 to get surgery on his back. He sent pictures of the x-ray to his friend and even put it onto his Twitter banner. Now, from the scans, it seemed like what Luigi went under was called spinal fusion, where they use screws and rods on the two levels of the spine to address the misalignment which causes the pain. Luigi would visit Hawaii in December and November one last time at the end of 2023, and he actually received a $100 fine for going to a mountain area that was not permitted to people. This was literally the most illegal thing he did before the shooting. Like, that's literally it. At the end of 2023, Luigi returned to Baltimore to be with his family. But around July of 2024, Luigi seemingly just went completely missing. His family hadn't heard from him in months, reaching out to all of his fellow friends to see if they've heard anything from him. But his friends didn't really know either, as they haven't seen him in months. Luigi went completely ghost on all the friends that he planned to catch up with. TrueCar reported that he hasn't worked for them since 2023. He stopped posting on Twitter and social media altogether. It's like he just fell off the face of the earth. It was extremely unlike Luigi. Almost anyone close to him says that they have not heard from him after July of 2024. It was literally that same month that one of his friends actually posted a picture tagging him and saying, "You made commitments to me for my wedding, and if you can't honor them, I need to know so I can plan accordingly." This post has since been deleted. What happened in the 6 months between the shooting and July of 24 is completely unknown. The family hadn't heard of him until he was arrested. But there are some clues that subtly hint to what has happened. He had review for the books Back Mechanic, The Secrets to a Healthy Spine Your Doctor Isn't Telling You, and Crooked, Outwitting the Back Pain Industry on the Road to Recovery on his Goodread account. In January, he left a review on the Unabomber. It's easy to quickly and thoughtless write this off as a manifesto of a lunatic in order to avoid facing some of the uncomfortable problems it identifies. Now, one of his favorite quotes listed was, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profound sick society." The last ever quote that he liked was actually by Dr. Seuss from the Lorax. "Unless someone you like cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not." This may partially hint as to his slight change of mind, but nothing truly explains what happens. The best that we really have to work with is the back pain and the surgery that he received for it, as a lot of this activity started to happen after the surgery. He turned 26 around that time, so he was probably kicked off his family's insurance and got really fucked with the bill. When police arrested Luigi, he had a 262-page handwritten manifesto on him. While the official manifesto at this time was not released to the public, it is confirmed that he takes responsibility for the murder, notes how UnitedHealthCare's market cap has gone up while life expectancy in the US has gone down, while criticizing health insurance companies who, quote, "continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it." It is officially quoted that in the manifesto he says, "To the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for this country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. I apologize for my strife or traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites had it coming." This really is the most that was released at the time. However, there is an allegedly finished version of the manifesto that has been spreading around. "To the feds, I'll keep this short because I do respect what you do for our country. To save you a lengthy investigation, I state plainly that I wasn't working with anyone. This was fairly trivial, some elementary social engineering, basic CAD, a lot of patience. The spiral notebook, if present, has some straggling notes and to-do lists that illuminate the gist of it. My tech is pretty locked down because I work in engineering, so probably not much info there. I do apologize for my strife of traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites had it coming." A reminder, the US has the #1 most expensive healthcare system in the world, yet we rank roughly 42 in life expectancy. United is the indecipherable largest company in the US by market cap, only by Apple, Google, and Walmart. It has grown and grown, but our life expectancy? No, the reality is these indecipherable have simply gotten too powerful and they continue to abuse our country for immense profit because the American public has allowed them to get away with it. Obviously, the problem is more complex, but I do not have the space, and frankly, I do not pretend to be the most qualified person to lay out the full argument. But many have illuminated the corruption and greed decades ago, and the problem simply remains. It is not an issue of an awareness at this point, but clearly power games at play. Evidently, I'm the first to face it with such brutal honesty. Again, at this time, that is not the officially confirmed manifesto, it is simply alleged. Mario is currently facing trial, and most likely with all the evidence will be facing life behind bars. Whatever his mission was, he clearly accomplished it in some type of way. After the assassination, UHC's value went down by $45 billion. Changes have already been made, and in the most fucked up way possible, could be a giant wake-up call for a lot of insurance companies. Who knows what Luigi has inspired in this whole entire thing? To the people, Luigi did what no one ever dared or thought would do to a very corrupt organization. But to the legal system and to corporate leaders, he is a bloodthirsty criminal who did an unforgivable crime. Yet a lot of things don't really add up for Luigi. His arrest is very suspicious. Why would someone who is the talk of the nation with his face plastered everywhere on every TV, every social media screen ever, go to the most popular chain in the world with the same weapon, the same fake ID being used, and a handwritten abandoned manifesto basically admitting to the crime. It's like he wanted to get caught, and maybe he did. What happened in those 6 months when he fell off the face of the earth? There's a lot more questions that need to be answered, and hopefully we get an answer.